Today on Mysterious Morsels, we're talking about science fiction movies. I just really like the fall, and I don't think I'm a fall enthusiast as much as other people. My sister's totally obsessed with fall, which is ironic because she was born on Christmas. But I have always been I guess, more of a winter person. So I like the cold a lot. I like snow a lot. I really like the holidays. Of course, I'm partial to summer just because I feel like that's my free time in my world. But um, fall. It's cool. It's neat. I like the crisp and the apples and the pumpkin whatnot, and I really really like Thanksgiving and I really really like Halloween, but they're not really my jam. I don't own them, but they're cool. And one of the things that I find happens because of the spookiness is that you get horror movies rolled out or sci-fi movies rolled out. Although I feel like summer sometimes is also sci-fi movie time, but you usually get the horror movies and the sci-fi movies kind of rolling out more than usual in the fall because they want to catch the Halloween traffic. So to that end, these are some of the most awesome things that I've ever liked in no apparent order whatsoever. But I'll probably pick a winner in the end. And I think if you're a diehard person that likes sci-fi, then you already know what the winner is because it's not even a question. But um, in the book of me, according to me and nobody else, I really really like um, Aliens and the Aliens franchise. I'm partial to the second one, Aliens. So Alien comes out in the 70s and it's cool. And even though it's kind of dated with the tech at the moment, it's still got a lot of jump scares, very neat, really like the way it was done. Ridley Scott did a fantastic job. And Aliens comes out years later in the mid 80s and blows away the first one, which is an odd thing because you don't always get that sequel being better situation. It's very rare. It's extremely rare. And this holds up. Now they go on to make a 3 and a 4. And then it kind of went a little weird. So I love the Sigourney Weaver story. I really liked that they carried over the story, even though they really didn't carry over the people. And I think the strongest one is Aliens, but I would have to say that um, 3 kind of got a little strange. 4 got even weirder when they bring in like what Winona Ryder. Like, what are you doing? And then they started going this Prometheus route, and you start to see these fusions of Alien versus Predator. Now, Predator being on my list, of course, as well. Really liking Predator. Again, old school. And 2, not so great. But when they started making AVP and you have Aliens versus Predator, they create this whole other sub story, this other plot, this entire mythological perfectness where the two of them can go together as hunter and hunted. And it was really fantastic because no one really thought about them other than independently prior to. So that is great. Creates a new story. Alien versus Predator 2 Requiem, again, not so great. Looked like they were just trying to crank it out and ride some waves of lots of bullets and let's shoot things that are foreign. Didn't really work out too well. Xenomorphs, if you will. And then they get back to the story again with the most recent releases. So, and I think they're actually going to build that up again and have another one come out. So that whole independently, both franchises are good. And then together they actually reinforced one another and made it really likable, watchable, almost historic, which is funny because you're taking complete mythology and turning it into history as if, like, obviously when the aliens landed, and of course that they even build in Wayland as the character who becomes Lance Henriksen, who of course becomes the android in the other one, but then you find out that he's mimicked after the guy that was the rich guy who was behind everything. It's just very cool. So I guess I should say spoiler alert, but I'm assuming that you know these movies. So everything with Alien and everything with Predator, very cool. Independence Day, more modern, 96, the original. Then they come back with the second one. Still salty that my boy Will Smith from Philly, as much as I really like him, I was upset that he didn't come back for that. I thought he should have. Just saying. But Independence Day was a star-studded cast. Came out around 4th of July weekend in 96. Very neat for the practical effects, and it still holds up in technological world because they had a nice fusion of blowing up little models of things and then also having the actual CGI that was kind of new at the time. And neat movie, a lot of people in it, decent plot, longer movie. But I really liked it, and the second one holds up as well. And it's great that most of the original cast was able to come back. Again, Will Smith. So that was cool. That was a modern day look on if we all had to just shut up and get along as Earth versus someone else. And I like that theme because you don't see that too often. It's usually like some isolated pocket of people, and there's zombies, or there's an alien, or there's a threat, or there's a slasher, or there's a killer, or whatever. And then that city or state or town, or maybe even the US or whatever, has to fight it. But this was global. So much like things and events that we've had to deal with lately, this was Earth versus, in this case, aliens. But at least the alien wasn't a killer amoeba or virus. So pretty neat. So I like that thematically. And of course, the little speech in the end was cool with the president, and the fact that the president goes and fights with them. It was very cool. The Core. Don't make fun of me. The Core is probably a lesser known movie. A lot of famous people in it. Aaron Eckhart being number one, and Hilary Swank, I believe, and other people too. But The Core is Stanley Tucci plays this obnoxious scientist, very full of himself, had some discoveries. They cause issues. Earth stops spinning. Okay, is this plausible? Probably not. But if you just suspend total reality for a minute, it is a perfect fusion of nerdy people solve a problem and nerds win. It is it's not pragmatic. it's not typical, and it's awesome. And in the end, nerds win. They pull every nerd from every country, and again, Earth has to solve a problem. It reminded me of Apollo 13, which, although that's more historical, not really sci-fi, good movie reference though. There's that great scene where, and I think Ron Howard did a great job at portraying all this. But I mean, who doesn't love Tom Hanks, obviously, and Kevin Bacon and Bill Paxton, R.I.P. But when they're stuck and they have to get them home, there's that great scene where they take all the engineers, dump them in a room, lock them in, give them the same conditions and the same materials that are up in the spaceship. And they're like, you got to make this square peg fit into this round hole to make a scrubber, or they're going to die. Go. And they do it, and they figure it out. And it's like that. It reminds me of that. The Core is, okay, Earth stops spinning. What do we do about it? And yeah, okay, unrealistic problem, but they create solutions like no wasn't an answer because everyone's going to die or you're going to fix it. And of course they fix it. So kind of like Armageddon, which could get an honorable mention on this. Not necessarily a normal problem per se, but same idea, with that. So big global threat that's cataclysmic and saved. But it was very cool because nerds win and nerds put it together. Going old school for a second, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, an epic movie that was based on, I believe, Robert Heinlein's book years before. So the idea that somebody's coming along and taking people, and they end up in like a pod. And, the movie rendition, again, it's dated. So it's cool because it's fledgling and yet pillar-like sci-fi that had to, create all of what was be to come and make way for a lot of movies of that genre. And the most natural, logical next one to jump into would be The Faculty, the 1999 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So it's much more modern. They tweak a plot, and you've got this Elijah Wood rendition, who apparently is into horror, even though he's a hobbit or something, ends up going into this perfect amoeba type parasitic figure that is taking kids over by way of a high school in the middle of Ohio, because all bad things happen in Ohio, because nobody would expect it there, obviously. Sorry, Ohio. The way I see it, I'm from Philly, so, Cleveland, you got the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Let's be honest. We all know you didn't have anything, so they gave you that, but it really belongs here. So the way I see it, that's why you get the whole, issue with that. You don't have any choice. Oh, because you obviously got stuck with, having to have the killers and the aliens and the invasions, and it has to be that way. So I'm just saying, that was my sidebar. I'm sorry. So Ohio gets to get eaten, but that's them. Anyway, the Faculty is very cool, and it's worth watching, and it's a modern day rendition of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And Clea Duvall even talks about Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Puppet Master, and so references a lot of old horror, and much like Scream, although in the horror genre, where they start talking about Randy starts talking about movies and saying like, oh, this is where a person gets killed, or you never say you're going to be back. There's like rules, and even though there's not, there kind of are. And one of them is apparently that you attack Ohio first because it's unsuspecting. So again, I'm sorry, Ohio. Anyhow, they're kind of neat. So that idea of like taking over a person or assuming an identity, that's super creepy because it's like you're vulnerable and you can't do anything about it. 2001, very old school, Space Odyssey, which later would give way to 2010. Still like a 1 better than 10. Almost pretentious in the sense that it is a perfectly shot movie. Now, I'm not saying it's a perfect movie, and I'm not saying it's a movie that I would want to sit and watch back to back. But if you've never seen it, just out of respect to the genre, you should give a look. It's old school, but Stanley Kubrick was always a strange and unusual mind, and it's perfect in the sense that they'll show repeatedly, whether you catch it or not is on you, precursors and references and foreshadowing to what's going to happen. And space is in fact a void, so you don't hear anything. And there's a lot of the movie where there's absolutely no sound, which drove people crazy. But in truth, it's honest because you wouldn't have sound in those space portals, etc. There's like this line that you see, no one pays attention to it, but the door that they eventually blow off to get out of the ship says, and they pan past it a million times, danger, explosive bolts. Nobody cares. It's just a warning on a door. But eventually, the bolts explode. You don't hear it because you're in space. Duh. People got freaked about that, by the way. But Kubrick has given points where it's like on target with this. The door flies off and then he gets to leave. The idea of the computer being super creepy. Hal, don't do that, Hal. That was sort of the idea where you give way to the modern day Alexa or Siri or Michael Knight's Kit later on with Knight Rider. So there's a lot of like computers that create a persona, and that could go good, bad, or ugly. You got, Jarvis and Friday with the Marvel series. You've, on the good side, if you will, and then you have that whole bit with the Ultron and things going wrong, or AI where stuff goes bad. And so it's a nod to all that, but it is neat because it was actual astronauts and with Kubricisms the way they are, it was done true to form and is technically a perfectly made movie in terms of the edit and the way it's portrayed. Just not necessarily something I would watch repeatedly, but I like it. Giving way to AI, let's talk about AI. So the movie itself, AI, which I thought was terribly depressing. As much as I love Steven Spielberg, it's just so sad. I mean, it's like the kid develops a liking to the people, and then he's depressed, and he's got this psychotic Teddy Ruxpin wannabe little teddy bear that saves a lock of hair, and he misses the mom, and he kind of recreates her in a very Pinocchio kind of way, and then of course he realizes he's alone forever, and then he meets aliens, and they didn't even know people because people self-destruct, and he tries to eat real food, and I want to be a real boy, but he's not. And let's be honest, of all the Disney canon, Pinocchio probably one of my least favorite because it's kind of creepy. Because really, as much as Walt did a lot of research in Europe, he probably should have read the Italian a little more closely because Pinocchio is not exactly a happy story for kids. But I get it. So AI, I watched it. I enjoyed it. It was sad. I really try not to watch it. More my speed on the AI level of things would be Minority Report, where you start to use tech. Humans are using tech to their advantage, maybe far beyond the reaches of premonition and things that they shouldn't. At least the precogs are real people. So it's not like we've given over in a leading toward, I'll say, Terminator sort of way where Cyberdyne Systems takes over, or in The Matrix where the machines take over. Two huge franchises that I absolutely adore. So I think Minority Report, we still have the reins on, and you don't have a person or a thing just completely taking over. I think with honorable mention like Transcendence, where you have Johnny Depp, he was like a sick, famous, rich guy, and he tries to like confuse his consciousness into the AI world, and he does, and of course he like takes over the stock market, and kind of wish he would do that now, but it was like this whole thing, and it was a different spin. I think there was that one, I don't know if it was just called Her, I think that was it. It was with the creepy mustache version of Joaquin Phoenix, where he falls in love with his phone and with the AI on the phone, and it was odd. They like have a relationship, and then he's too slow for her, and she ends up falling in love with another machine that's like in Cyberland. So it's kind of interesting. I couldn't get past the creepy mustache, but anyway, those kind of I'll say hostile takeovers or abandonments or ignorances from machines like Pish Posh, You Stupid Human, even though we were the original creators, where they've superseded us. And one of my favorites, I, Robot, which again, you're going back Isaac Asimov kind of Will Smith spin on it, really interesting movies because they would take humans sort of on the very cusp of control versus not with artificial intelligence, and then they either lose it, gain it, or struggle to get it back. But they're all highly amusing, a lot of excitement, a lot of entertainment, quality value, lot going on, and they keep your attention, and there's a lot of action in the movies, but there's also an actual plot and decent actors. So they're all worth watching. And like I said, the Matrix franchise, Terminator franchise, I can't say enough about it. The one and dones like I, Robot, again, great movie. I could watch that back to back when it comes on. And again, that has a lot to do with Will Smith because he's very funny. But there's a lot there. If you're going more the classic old school element of just plain old aliens, well, I guess it starts with Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And that's I'll say original Spielberg with Richard Dreyfuss, and you've got this system of lights, and they're trying to communicate, and something lands, and they're going to go up, and you get these little dudes come out in the end that's like your classic alien, and they were positive, and they weren't trying to hurt anybody, and it was all in, I'll say, good faith and exploration. They play on that in Independence Day by giving a nod to the retrofitted light panel on the side of a Huey, and they put the helicopter up to do the light panels in the sequence that would have equated to the near little notes, and of course then they get blown out of the sky, and they're like, no peace, so those guys were not interested in any kind of collaboration. But that first Spielberg movie, which he did a lot of these obviously, but that gives way to E.T., which was the cute little happy, M&M's Reese's Cup guy. And he is, other than the worst video game ever, which they say, it's a shame. I never had that one, and I didn't go looking for it either. I think they're on a landfill in New Mexico. At least that's what I hear. But for Atari, I never bought that one. But I had it in television first. E.T. and the idea of Phone Home and all was really a little Drew Barrymore, a big hit. And I have to tell you, it's cute, not my thing. As much as I love Spielberg, I never got into that, and I'll tell you why. It was too close for me, being the youngin' that I was, too close to Star Wars. And I wanted Star Wars, and I love Star Wars, and we'll be talking about that at length in a bit. Calm down. But it was smack in the middle of the timing between Empire and Jedi. I think Empire was like 81, 79, 80, 81, somewhere in there, and I think that E.T. was 82. And then Jedi was like 83, 84. So, you went from the original 77 Star Wars and ships and yay. So I'm this little kid that wants to experience that. And then I got a little kind of ugly monster with a weird, like, glowing finger who eats Reese's Cups and hides in piles of clothes. Not the same thing. So, and it's a shame because I don't think the tech was there to make the home where he's from as cool. I don't know that it'd ever do a sequel at this point, but he's Spielberg. He could do anything. But that was sort of, for me, is like the purism of Close Encounters of the Third Kind gives way to an E.T. kind of campy, happy side of things. And then even later on, he goes into Men in Black. Again, with Will Smith. Do you see a theme? He must be into this. It's a far departure from things like Bad Boys, but Men in Black, great acting. Obviously, you get Tommy Lee Jones in the mix too, and they went on to do the international one, and they're funny because it's not just the cast and how they deliver the system, but it's this idea of a secret society, and everybody always has this conspiracy theory, and they really play on Area 51, and they did that as well with the Independence Day series. So anytime there was some sort of nod to secrecy or what's going on, it was more of the joke. And again, what's not to love? So you see this more happy side, and aliens, they might be out to get us, but some of them we work with, and we have alliances with them. And didn't you know about it? And here, let me flashy blinky you, and you're done. You don't remember. So it's the campy side of it. I do think that On the not so campy side, you have things like Event Horizon, where there's an evil eye. There's like the Oculus that's going to come get you, and it's like sucks you into the vortex of the underworld and all this kind of thing. And there's like a ship, and it's cursed, and things like that. That's almost on the tip of paranormal, but it was still sci-fi. You're in the spaceship, and it's up in the future. So early Lawrence Fishburne. So it gets put in the sci-fi category, but because it's definitely not horror, but things happen, bad things happen to a lot of people on this ship, and it's just like it's kind of a possessed a vessel. I would almost parallel it to Ghost Ship, and Ghost Ship is straight horror because there's nothing about the sci-fi genre in it, but same idea. You've got this like lost vessel, and it's going to some portal or something horrible, and it's doomed forever. So that was kind of neat for what it was. Definitely different, little departure from other things, as was old school Blade Runner, which I shouldn't say they relaunched. I should say they brought up a very, very late sequel, but Harrison Ford in both. The original Blade Runner, the idea of copying people, and it's just very new for its time. And I don't think it made the splash that people wanted it to in the box office. It was almost like too cutting edge, too avant-garde, and it caught a cult following as a result, but wasn't really made to catch on. I think they thought it would do better than it did, and that's why it was able to make like a comeback. And it kind of like Tron, unrelated, totally different plots, but same idea. Original Tron, so much so they brought back the Tron. Now you got a Tron coaster in Disney. Tron was neat because at the time it was like, ooh, light cycle. You had all these things that were like Dune and Krull and Mad Max, where it was this weird dystopian something, either in the desert or in the future, in the sand or in a matrix or in the somewhere in the vortex of whatever, whether it was lights or scary things or and it was borderline fantastical in a labyrinth sort of way, where you have this kind of wizardry but not, so you can't straight up put it in a Lord of the Rings category, and it's not really dungeons and stuff, and but it is also sort of capture and dystopian, and there's some element that's new wave or science that had to help you, save you, or get out of this terrible thing. And a lot of them are being revisited or being relaunched or just straight up remade, and it's more because of the background and I'll say the accessory to it, like what the tech is there now to do more with the worlds or have more conversation about the characters. So they're just all kind of hodgepodge together, but a lot of them in that kind of almost games as well. I feel like there were a lot of games that came out of it. There was a Tron game, there was a Dune game, there was a Krull game. They didn't really go far, and they were old school gaming. I'm talking like 80s, but speaking of games and leaning towards that, you have Resident Evil. So zombie-esque, but science caused it. So I don't know that I'd put like old school George Romero Night of the Living Dead in there, but I would definitely put Resident Evil. You have the serum. They're trying to create like super soldiers. Same thing going on with Doom, also a video game. Quake did the same. And you've got this like super soldier, but it can go bad because it suddenly develops a conscience, and it's either a good thing or a bad thing, and you don't know if you're going to be good or bad. And then that goes on for a big franchise. Did I mention that Mila Jovovich is fantastic? I love her. And she shows up a bit here too, much like Will Smith, although he's probably more, I think she's very comedic. I would say Will Smith takes the cake when it comes to that in a battle of the two of them with comedic talent. But she's a fantastic actress, and I think she's incredibly fit and so flawless in her execution of being this wonderful bastion of good for everything and against the Umbrella Corporation, and she's this basically the super soldier Alice. But she appears again in a much more campy sci-fi that's called Fifth Element with Bruce Willis, which is just funny. It's just funny. I mean, there's spaceships and ridiculous characters and things, but it's just funny. The whole thing is funny. So she's this like Lilu off, flighty kind of aloof character. And then she makes another appearance in a completely different style and genre in The Fourth Kind, which was a nod to the Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but totally different. The fourth kind was supposedly based on, and I think they went a little Blair Witch with this. The people tried to say that there were people taken in Alaska, and they put footage up on the internet that this was like a real thing, and there were all these documented stories and all these testimonials. Now, it was done for the movie, so it wasn't real. At least the points they were trying to push were real. But, people are sheep, so for the most part, they believed it and were watching this stuff as if it were verbatim. In reality, it was put up by the movie house. Now, have there been some shady things in the places that they were alleging? Yes. Were there as many, like the hundreds they were talking about? No, I think there were like 3 or 4 cases, not dismissing what those people went through. But it was a lot with like outside noises, and like owls would appear, and she's flying planes throughout Alaska, and she's supposed to be this psychologist unraveling all of it, and gets kind of sucked into the situation. So again, Mila Jovovich and the campy, the funny, and the almost paranormal, but not, still kind of sci-fi fourth kind. Little fun facts, backstory here. I took an astronomy course in grad school, and it was part of their science requirement. And I was terrified because I thought, oh my God, I can't do science and math. Ew, I play with words. And I did like it, and I liked it. We had a great telescope, and got to go up on the roof and see things and stuff. And then we had to do a little bit of math, but I was able to actually pull it off. X equals, I'm not sure, but I figured it out. And one of the things that they talked about was like a lot of the Carl Sagan backstories, and how they really did go looking for evidence of, life on Mars and people out there and stars and things like that. And they talked about Galileo a lot because he was the original keeper of all things in astronomy, and named a lot of the things. And one thing that I had no idea, a fact that came up, was that they did have a system. It was the first kind, second kind, third kind that were supposed to be. That's where the Close Encounters series actually came from. That, it was like people and stuff on Earth, and then people in the next like realm, and then people that were from somewhere else. And as of that time that Carl Sagan had put it together, and a lot of these scientists had started to actually investigate these things, there were no sightings that were considered official or real. Obviously, people talk about Area 51. Who knows? Wasn't there? But they dismissed it as testing or whatever, and there was no official data or support that was a true evidence of any kind of fourth kind, any kind of third kind encounter, so that there was nobody that was out of this world, literally. So there's that. There's a nod to that. I get a kick out of the movie The Core, which I mentioned before, because Stanley Tucci starts doing this routine, and he teases him the whole time, and the cast is like, you're going to do that Carl Sagan thing the entire way that we're on the trip. And he's constantly talking into his voice recorder and making a book deal and whatever. And it's very Carl Sagan-esque of that. So it's a nod to where this came from in the terminology. So it's just all interwoven and pretty interesting how they did it. And if you get the joke, there's 2 kinds of people in the world: those who get the joke and those who don't. If you get the joke and you understand the reference, then it's always better and funnier than if you don't. This one is more of a joke, but I have to put it in there. The Rocky Horror Picture Show. You can't really do anything without the Rocky Horror Picture Show being put into sci-fi. I mean, horror in the title. It's a musical. I mean, who doesn't have a musical in the sci-fi category? It was originally released, I believe, in London with Tim Curry on the theatrical stage. It picks up momentum. They put it on the stage, I think, out in LA, late 70s. And that's how Meatloaf first got into theater, playing the character of Eddie. And they create the movie. And Richard O'Brien, a.k.a. Riff Raff, makes the movie. There was, believe it or not, a sequel that most people don't know about. I haven't even seen the sequel. I kind of hear it's terrible, but very different. And it's controversial based on the ridiculousness of the content. But for modern day audiences and what you're actually watching, it's pretty benign, considering, it's more double entendre and allusions than anything. But very funny that it has a soundtrack. Very funny that it's sci-fi based, yet this big horror castle, and they're trying to go Frankenstein and build, well, Eddie and then ultimately Rocky. Definitely laughable and not a serious sci-fi movie, but I had to throw it in there because it's a perfect fusion of sci-fi and horror, and Don't forget that musical part. So, and the soundtrack's very good. I don't care what anybody says. The soundtrack's very good. Bought that soundtrack multiple times for my sister because people kept stealing it because they liked it a lot. And you can still find in a couple theaters every now and again midnight showings where they bring everything and throw stuff at the stage. I'd hate to be cleanup crew after that, but anyhow, if you've never seen it, it's worth watching and honorable mention. So I'd say the two big empires in the end here, if I was doing some sort of top 10, I'm way beyond 10. The two big empires are Star Trek and Star Wars. And some people argue that you're either Trekkie or you're into Star Wars. I say no, because I've loved both forever. And Star Trek is a huge franchise. It's gone on in many directions for literally decades and hundreds of episodes. The original actually only ran like 2 years and was canceled, but gave way to 6 movies and then a crossover movie, which gave way to the Next Generation, which gave way to Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and you went through the really they kind of hit every mark with the captain. You know, you have the rogue guy, you have the diplomat, you know, you have the negotiator, you have all the different types of characters that are in there and the people filling them, and of course you have all this diversity throughout the cultures of these foreign from other planets, not just on Earth. You know, Earth's like pish posh. They're in so many systems, and there's this federation, and it's gone over probably I think 12 different realms of franchise at this point, and you know has the Chris Pine version of things out now, which I don't know if they're going to create another one. I hope they do, but they've gone a couple movies deep as well, and even mixed in older characters and original characters from the first series in the 60s. So Star Trek, very neat, very cool, definitely ahead of its time. And despite the fact that it was probably put together with cardboard and duct tape behind the scenes, everything that you heard or saw was stuff that would come. It was things that would be created. The idea of like a recorder or a cell phone not far off from one another. You know, have a little thing in your ear that you could be able to talk to somebody else that, you know, whoever was trying to contact Dr. Spock. Oh, yeah, you know, no big deal. You've got, you know, two-way systems that people use all the time between walkie-talkies and earpieces and cameras and things. So a lot of that was not invented at the time, but its fictionality became reality. And, you know, you look for that. As far as Star Trek goes, if I had to pick one, because some of them were cheesy, not going to lie, like the one with the whales, I really like First Contact, and also kind of keeping with that alien theme, with Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes, who's number one, wrote a lot of the movies, wrote a lot of the series, was a predominant writer in other sci-fi things, wrote the entire Roswell series, not the one that's on now, but the original one that came out on like the WB a long time ago. So he's always been a prolific writer, and he's written other things too. He was even involved in the there was like a 80s mini series, which was happening in the 80s to have a mini series, because now of course, you know, cable's much more of a thing, but he did North and the South, and he was part of that too, which is obviously not sci-fi, but Jonathan Frakes is a pretty big writer when it comes to all the sci-fi genres and a lot of the TV series. So that I liked First Contact because it was same kind of thing. They're space-time continuum, you're fighting the Borg, resistance is futile, they end up in the United States in Montana, and it's right before one of the first launches of some fictional missile, and it ends up becoming the first contact that they happen to have with, oh, surprise, the Vulcans, hence why Spock and, you know, the alliance gets formed there. But it's a star-studded cast, pretty cool. I like it a lot, and it's just one of many movies, but if I had to pick a movie, that would be one that I really liked. It's a shame because in Vegas there used to be, in the Hilton Casino, which I don't even know if the Hilton exists anymore, but there was the Star Trek Experience, and you could go eat in Quark's Bar, and you could get like kind of the equivalent now of Oga's Cantina in Disney, but it was actually a big space, and it had a lot of museum stuff for Star Trek, and it had a lot of characters, and it had a little bored creepy guy walking around, and you could see a lot of the things from the shows. I don't know what happened to the exhibit, or if it got put somewhere else or what, but this is going back to like '04 when I saw it. It was pretty cool. And that probably leads me to my favorite number one, which would be Star Wars. I always say it shaped my life because I was a wee tot when I saw it. Star Wars has as much, definitely more even, reach and rewatchability because it went on and on. The franchise is huge. I don't think it'll ever end. It's gone into books. It's gone into animation. It's gone into everything that Disney Plus has now created a spin-off series. It certainly had 9 movies. It's funny, everybody thought it was a trilogy, and then it kind of became a non-ilogy, if that's a thing. So it's gigantic. Of course, George Lucas comes out with this brain trust and has it forever, sells it to Disney, and it'll still always be George Lucas's in my mind. But he was a visionary to that, and went to school and worked for Spielberg. I find that funny because he had Star Wars and he had Indiana Jones, and certainly Spielberg's had millions of things. And I'm sure they've called each other and worked and collaborated on many things together. But you have these two great film minds coming out of school around the same time. It's almost the Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak of all things sci-fi and thriller, and that it went to that point where you're way past no return. Everybody's into it. Everybody's obsessed, and you can still regurgitate a lot of the same things. And it all comes down to good versus evil. It all comes down to everybody gets behind it because, again, it's a planetary thing, or in this case, literal systems and cosmos. After Cosmos, fighting for one thing against this evil nastiness. I always talk about how there's the black and white of it all. You have this very dark gray, and there's not too many women. They started to kind of bring them in to be nasty characters, but not really. I think that was just more of a PC move. But traditionally, the Empire was cold and dark, and a lot of just guys and machinery and almost Matrixy, and then you had the light side, literally, and the white side, or the tan side, or the sand and the snow, and elements, if you will, and females appear, and light appears, and goodness appears, and it's this constant struggle of A versus B, plus versus minus, black versus white, yin yang kind of a fight, and it's it's forever. So literally Interstellar, good movie by the way. And literally playing with space-time continuum as far as it goes. So it's probably the be-all, end-all. And I think that if you're really into any kind of sci-fi, you might even not put Star Wars in the category because it's its own special entity above everything else. But definitely longevity is involved, and it has spearheaded a lot of what I mentioned today because there's elements in it and gave probably some interest or spark of imagination to a lot of these other projects. And I think it will go on to do that forever because no matter how old you are, whether you saw the originals or the relaunches or spin-offs or things that are coming out now, it'll just never go away. It's not going to be something that leaves. Much like Coca-Cola, Disney, McDonald's, it's just iconic Americana. So to joke about Adam Sandler's Pixel, which I love very much, having been a gamer in the 80s, yeah, if they were a capsule that got thrown somewhere in the universe and there is life elsewhere and they found it and they found those things, they're definitely going to think that we're with all of the universe at some point because we're constantly going somewhere to blow somebody up on a Star Cruiser. But hey, what can I say? Somebody had to talk about the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy and the Kessel Run, But yeah, I would say Star Wars wins if there were a contest, and it would win on my contest. So that's my 2 cents in the 25-cent version, as I like to call it, of all things sci-fi, because that's what I like. I hope I provided you with some info to maybe go watch one of these, or if you've never seen one before, or if you don't know about them, and inspired you to either write your own, make one up, watch it, enjoy it, like it, find something new, or go see something and catch something that you might not have noticed before in one of the movies that you missed, or something like that. If nothing else, I'm full of useless knowledge. So thanks for watching Mysterious Morsels and our spooky series going through this season. Drop us a comment to let us know what your favorite sci-fi movie is, or if I missed anything that I should add to the list. If you like this type of content, scare the like button into turning blue and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Thanks for watching.